Incredible father of 12-year-old girl, injured by racist cop, reveals unexpected fight for justice. James Thompson was the kind of father every kid dreams of. From sunrise to sunset, he worked in his garage, fixing vehicles and tightening bolts, fueled by the smell of motor oil and the laughter of his 3 children. Evening turned him into a delivery driver, wheels spinning down the streets of Philadelphia as he navigated between jobs, always hustling to keep the lights on. His pride, Mia, a bright-eyed 12-year-old, had big dreams for her looming teenage years. She often spoke of change, of brighter days for their community, alive with hope and passion. But hope can be a fragile thing. One ordinary evening, their trip to the local grocery store turned ugly. Mia, anxious to collect candy for her siblings, put a few sweets into her pocket while waiting for her dad. But suddenly, a police officer loomed over her like a dark cloud. "What do you think you're doing?" he barked, muscles bulging beneath his uniform. This was not the kind of change Mia had imagined. She felt her heart race, cheeks burning with embarrassment. I, she stammered, only to be met with force. In moments, a grip on her arm, she fell, trembling as tears began to flow. Not just pain from her scraped skin but a deeper wound, a crack in her innocence. James rushed in, horror-stricken, as the officer backed off, leaving Mia shaken and bruised. The airy delights of candy were lost forever. As news spread through their tight-knit neighborhood like wildfire, whispers turned into roars. James found himself grappling with sorrow and indignation. All those lessons in forgiveness from his late father had turned sour in his throat. Should he teach Mia to forgive the world or to demand her rights? He barely knew how to mend his daughter's broken spirit himself. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. More than just a single event, Mia's humiliation echoed through the community, awakening old wounds. Neighbors began sharing experiences of their own. The pain stirred, igniting the flame of resistance. James found himself at the center of meetings that layered their fears with truth. The tension thickened like fog, a shared anguish rising in the air, fueling their resolve. As courage rallied, a community stood together, angry, yet hopeful, but just when James thought they were building momentum, an unexpected revelation shook him to the core, cracking the very foundations of what he believed about justice and community. The urgency in the air pulsated, the echo of Mia's struggle heralding a call to action. Standing at the precipice of change, James and Mia pondered the haunting question: could they reconcile the weight of forgiveness with their fight for justice, or would they have to choose? The answer loomed like a shadow, enveloping their lives in uncertainty. James couldn't shake the unsettling feeling gnawing at him as he lay awake that night. The walls seemed to close in, the shadows dancing across the room echoing with his daughter's sobs. Each tear that fell from her eyes played over and over in his mind like a broken record. He thought of her bright smile, her unquenchable spirit. He had always believed in teaching her to rise above the noise, to find joy in small things. But how could he reconcile that with what had just happened? The next day, the sun burst through the clouds, but it felt like a trick. Mia had shut herself away in her room, a fortress of stuffed animals and silence. Every few minutes, James would steal glances at her door, listening for a sound, a sign that she was still in there, still okay. He wrestled with the idea of leaving her be, letting her process. But he couldn't shake that burning urge to reach out, to assure her she was safe even if the world didn't feel that way right then. After what felt like an eternity, he knocked softly. "Hey, Mia. Can I come in?" Her voice, barely above a whisper, broke his heart. "I'm fine, Dad." He opened the door anyway, stepping into her dimly lit sanctuary. "You don't look fine," he said gently, taking a seat on the edge of her bed. "I'm here if you want to talk." She turned away, staring at the wall, a volcano of emotions threatening to erupt. Finally, she spoke, her words laced with hesitation. "What if it happens again? What if it's worse next time?" James felt a lump in his throat as her fears struck him like a punch. He reached out, hoping to wrap her in a reassuring hug, but she remained still, caught in her whirlwind of anxiety. "You know that we can be brave together, right?" he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We'll find a way through this. We can't let fear control us." Mia's eyes glinted with unshed tears, and for a moment, James felt the walls start to crumble. "But how can we fight against something so big?" she asked, her voice cracking that he clenched his fists, the weight of those words pushing him deeper into thought. The community had rallied, and now was the time to harness their voices into action. "Because we aren't alone, Mia. It's not just us anymore. Everyone is angry. Everyone cares. Together, we can make a difference." Curiosity sparked behind her watery gaze. "You really think so?" "I know so," James replied, his desperation turning into determination. "We can join forces, start talking to leaders, plan a march. We have a right to our voices. To demand respect." The fire in his words ignited something in Mia, and James felt her begin to soften. She slowly nodded, as if testing the waters of courage. "What do you think Mom would say?" The question struck him. He hadn't expected to dive into memories of his late wife during this moment. But it was true, she had been the warrior of their family. A woman who fought for what was right, even when it seemed impossible. "She'd be proud of you," he said, honest and fierce. "She'd want us to stand up for ourselves." Mia drew in a deep breath, finally letting it out slowly. She shifted, wiping her cheeks and sitting up straighter. "Okay. Let us do it. Let us fight." Finally feeling the optimism push through the haze of fear, James combined a smile with his pride. As they began discussing plans, the storm outside seemed to mirror the tempest they were ready to unleash in their community. They had only taken the first steps, but with every heartbeat, their intentions were crystal clear. This was more than a fight for justice, it was a mission for healing, for reclaiming hope. As the light streamed across her room, James felt a flicker of something brighter. But even as ambitions took flight, the shadows still loomed large, and the question on both of their minds lingered: how far would they have to go to be heard? It would be a long journey ahead, and both knew they had only just begun. The following days were a flurry of activity. James and Mia dove into their plans like they were launching a secret mission, poring over books, articles, and videos that educated them about activism. They spoke with neighbors, reaching out to other families in the community who had been shaken by the recent events. James felt a sense of urgency with every meeting, every call. Each face he saw reflected a painful mixture of fear and hope. They were united in their passions, each carrying scars from the past, but willing to stand tall for what was right. As they brainstormed ideas, James admired Mia's resilience. Gone was the girl who clung to her stuffed animals, now she was sparking conversations, her voice steady as she spoke up for those who felt voiceless. One particularly warm evening, they gathered with a small group of families in the park. The sun dipped low, casting a golden hue over the grass where they sat. James felt a warmth in the air, a mix of camaraderie and determination. "We can't just sit back," he addressed the group, heart racing. "We have to organize. Let us gather everyone for a march. A chance to be seen and be heard." The murmurs of agreement filled the air, lifting James's spirits. They talked logistics and shared stories, the mood bouncing between solemnity and bursts of laughter. Children dashed about, playing tag, reminding everyone of what they were fighting to protect. Mia, sitting next to him, leaned closer. "Dad, I want to make a sign. Something impactful." James smiled, pride swelling in his chest. "Let us do it together." That night, they spread supplies across the kitchen table: poster boards, markers, and paint. As the hours dwindled, their hands worked almost subconsciously, bonding them more than any words could. Mia sketched a simple heart, surrounded by the words peace and love. James carefully painted justice for all in bold, vibrant colors. Each brush stroke felt like a step closer to something more than anger. It felt like healing. By the time sleep crept in, their shared project lay in a colorful mess across the kitchen, a symbol of their commitment. The morning of the march dawned brisk and bright. James felt electric, adrenaline coursing through him. He and Mia dressed in matching t-shirts emblazoned with their messages. His heart thumped in rhythm with the beats of the drums that had begun to echo through the neighborhood as people gathered. As they approached the park where everyone was assembling, James caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd. It was Carla, their next-door neighbor, whose eyes spoke volumes of the pain they all shared. She reached out, hugging James tightly. "I'm proud of you both," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Mia saw the crowd swell, an ocean of faces united in purpose. She squeezed James's hand, eyes wide with excitement and apprehension. "Do you think we'll really make a difference?" James knelt beside her, looking into her hopeful gaze. "I believe we will. It might not be easy, but our voices matter. We're not just here for today, we're here for every future day." As they stepped forward into the thrumming pulse of the crowd, his heart swelled with both fear and hope. But just as the rallying chants began to rise, a dark cloud rolled in, both literally and metaphorically. Some distant sirens echoed, sending a ripple of uncertainty through the crowd. With a knot tightening in his stomach, James turned to Mia. "Stay close to me," he said sharply, feeling the weight of the responsibility he bore. Together they moved into the crowd, ready to face whatever would come next. But as they did, a sense of foreboding took hold. Could they truly navigate this storm? The loudest voice in the crowd was just ahead, demanding equality and justice. But would their little voices be drowned in the chaos? As James and Mia marched forward, heartbeats racing, a sudden voice cut through. "What are you going to do about it?" The question rang out, challenging the very essence of their journey. James and Mia paused, staring into the sea of faces, determination and uncertainty dancing in the air. Would they have the courage to seek answers beyond just the march? The crowd surged forward, a wave of humanity filled with both fear and determination. James took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. Every face around him was a reminder of what they were fighting for, but the voice that called out remained lodged in his mind, a challenge he couldn't ignore. Mia tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, what if we really can't change anything? What if this is just noise?" Her eyes glistened, fear mixed with hope, searching for reassurance. James knelt down, looking her directly in the eyes. "It's okay to feel scared. But remember, sometimes noise is what makes the biggest difference. Each voice counts, even if we can't see the effect right away." He rubbed her shoulder gently, hoping to instill the strength he felt waning within himself. The beat of drumsticks echoed against the concrete, urging them all onward. James stood up, clasping Mia's hand tightly. They pushed forward, merging into the thrumming heartbeat of the crowd. They joined a chant rising like a flame, voices demanding justice. The energy was intoxicating, yet it clung to his stomach like a heavy stone. "Justice!" echoed across the park, a rallying cry that sparked fervent emotion. People raised their signs high. The heart Mia had painted displayed proudly alongside Black Lives Matter, and Stop Police Brutality. James' throat tightened. How could they not have a huge impact when they all came together like this? Suddenly, a clash rang out. A group of officials in uniform stood at a distance, their expressions unreadable but menacing. A chill swept through the crowd, and a murmur of fear snaked its way among the hopeful chants. James felt his heart quicken, his instincts kicking in. "Stay close," he whispered to Mia, goosebumps rising on his arms as he noticed the mounting tension. The atmosphere shifted, an electric current of unease, stirring all around them. "What is going to happen, Dad?" Mia asked, eyes wide, voice trembling slightly. I don't know, sweet girl. But we're here together, and we'll face whatever comes next. Just then, a loud bang erupted in the air, followed by a cloud of tear gas that floated ominously toward their gathering. In that instant, chaos erupted. People began to scatter, panic dancing in frantic eyes. James felt a surge of fear wrap around his chest. Mia, cover your mouth. Let us get out of here. He shouted, pulling her close. The chant for justice had turned into cries of alarm. The crowd broke apart like waves crashing against a rock. They stumbled through the throng, trying to shield themselves from the cloud that burned their eyes and lungs. James could feel Mia's small hand slipping but tightened his grip, fiercely protective. Stay with me. Eyes stinging, panic rising, they moved together through chaos. He could feel people rushing around them, familiar faces becoming blurred as they sought safety. James realized how quickly their mission for change had morphed into a desperate survival instinct. Where did this leave them? Frustrated and frightened, James couldn't shake the feeling that the very system they stood against had just escalated, reminding them of the harrowing coldness that stood in stark contrast to their warm hopes for a better future. As they stumbled into an alley, catching their breath, James turned to Mia, whose face shone with a mix of fear and fierceness. What do we do now, Dad? He paused, heart racing, the air thick with uncertainty. Now we find another way. We're not done yet. The fight for justice had only just begun, and in the heart of darkness, James felt a spark igniting within him. Little did he know, this moment would become a turning point, pushing them both in ways they never expected. But as they stepped back into uncertain territory, a voice echoed from the shadows, echoing the pain they carried, waiting to be confronted. You think this is all just going to hide away? James turned slowly, the question hanging heavy in the air. What kind of battle were they truly facing? Could they turn this chaos back into a fight for change, or were they entering a deeper storm? James turned slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. The voice echoed persistently, laced with a bitterness that struck a nerve deep inside him. He squinted into the shadows, trying to discern the source. There, at the corner, stood a woman, her face smeared with remnants of the chaos they had just escaped. You think you can just walk away after this? She continued, her voice rising, sharper than the crackle of distant sirens. You think it's over? James felt Mia clutch his hand tighter. He turned to her, searching for strength. Her youthful innocence was overshadowed by fear, but there was something else, a flicker of determination that sparked in her eyes. Who are you? James demanded, his voice steady despite the churning inside him. What do you mean? My brother, he didn't make it out of a protest like this, she replied, her voice wavering. They just left him in the street. This is just the beginning. You can't hide from what's coming. James's gut twisted. He could hear the pain in her words. It painted a stark picture of the darkness that loomed just beyond the surface of their fight. Mia stepped closer to James, seeking his protection, yet emboldened by the shared experience of this woman's grief. What do you want us to do? James asked, feeling compelled to bridge the chasm between fear and action. Listen. Every voice matters, yes, but it can't be just noise. You have to stand firm after the noise fades. It's when silence reigns that they think they've won. James felt her words sink in. It wasn't enough to be here. They had to prepare for what came next. The fight had to continue, long after the crowds dispersed. He glanced at Mia, who was listening with intent. We need to gather those who feel the same, he said quietly. We can't let this moment fade away like smoke. The woman nodded, her fierce gaze embodying both rage and resilience. Then do it. Do it for the ones who aren't here. The ones who can't speak. James felt fire ignite within him again, that spark from earlier now roaring to life. You're right. We can't give up. There has to be a way to channel this anger, this pain into something actionable. Mia squeezed his hand, eyes wide with determination, echoing her father's resolve. We can make banners. We can talk to people, all the people who were here today. They're just as mad as we are. We can stick together. A sense of purpose washed over James, a conviction to turn chaos into change. He looked back at the woman, who was now nodding vigorously, her earlier anguish morphing into a fierce solidarity. Yes. Gather your voices. Set up meetings. Connect with those who fought before you. Build something lasting, she urged, her passion rippling through the air. James nodded, feeling a collective heartbeat rising in support. We will. This can't just be a moment. It has to be a movement. The three stood there, united by a common goal in the dim alley, surrounded by murmurs of chaos that still echoed outside. The battle lay ahead, but now it felt manageable. Together, they could forge a path. But as they began to outline their plans, the sound of approaching footsteps interrupted their moment of clarity. James turned toward the noise, a sense of foreboding creeping back into his chest. Not yet, he thought. They weren't ready. Who's there? He called out, feeling the weight of uncertainty begin to settle again. Who would they face now? What could emerge from the shadows as they stood at the cusp of their transformation? The footsteps grew louder, intensifying the tension in the air. James felt Mia press against him, her grip tightening as unease settled over them like a heavy blanket. Show yourself. He called again, trying to project courage he didn't fully feel. From the shadows emerged a figure, a man, tall and rugged, with eyes that flickered with a mix of concern and urgency. He seemed out of breath, as if he had sprinted through the chaos to find them. Are you? He hesitated, glancing at the woman who had spoken moments ago. Are you okay? We're fine, she replied, her tone clipped. But who are you? I'm David. I was near the protest when things got chaotic. I saw you three in the alley. I thought maybe you needed help. His gaze darted nervously toward the street beyond, where distant shouts still echoed. Help with what? James asked, still on guard. David stepped closer, his voice lowering, almost pleading. You don't know the half of it. Things are escalating out there. I've been organizing grassroots gatherings, meetings where folks can share their experiences, plan their next steps. I saw what you all were doing, and I thought you might want to join forces. Mia's eyes brightened for a moment, then dimmed again as she absorbed the urgency in David's words. James felt the weight of responsibility pressing harder on his shoulders. This wasn't just about them anymore, it was about everyone who felt powerless. And what if we don't? James asked, a challenge laced in his voice. What's the risk? David shifted uncomfortably. If we don't fight, things will only get worse. If we stay silent, it will send a message that we accept the status quo, that we're willing to let this happen. The woman stepped forward, her features softened slightly. We've already lost too many to this. We can't sit idly by and let fear keep us from seeking change. We owe it to their memory and to everyone who stands with us. James's heart raced faster now, caught between doubt and hope. So what's the plan? David's optimism was infectious. We start with our own neighborhood. Gather people, share stories. We create a network that connects everywhere across this city. People need to know they aren't alone. Mia nodded, her earlier hesitation melting away. We can meet after school. Use the community center. Everyone can bring their experiences. We'll provide a space, a safe space. The word struck a chord in the air, igniting a locked door in James's heart. Perhaps there really was a way forward. But it's dangerous, James reminded, contemplating the risks. What if they turn against us? Then we force them to listen, David replied, fire in his gaze. Every voice matters. We just have to speak louder. The woman stepped beside James, determination radiating from her. It's time to fight back. If we stay within the shadows, nothing will change. We take up the light. James felt a swell of courage as they exchanged glances. Here they were, a patchwork of scars and hopes, ready to shake the very foundations of their fear, but just as they began to outline their first meeting, sirens blared closer, sending a shiver down James's spine. "Listen, we need to go now," David urged, glancing anxiously behind him. "They're looking to silence voices like ours." Mia hesitated, fear creeping back into her eyes. "What if they come for us?" "I won't let that happen," James affirmed, instinctively placing himself between Mia and the encroaching chaos. "We need to stick together, no matter what." As they turned to flee from the alley, shadows closing in around them, James felt a firm resolve settling within him. This was just the beginning. They wouldn't be silenced so easily. But at the edge of the alley, they paused, wondering if they truly could outrun the shadows looming far beyond their immediate fear. Could they really become the voice of change they yearned to be? A voice from within urged them onward, but as they emerged into the unforgiving light, a chilling realization hit James. The fight wasn't only external, it smoldered within, too. And suddenly, confronting their own fears felt just as daunting as facing the world outside. So, what would it take to turn their fears into fortitude, and how far would they go for justice? The sun hung low, casting long shadows across the pavement as they burst from the alley. James felt the adrenaline pumping through him like a rallying cry. Every step was laden with uncertainty, but together they would forge ahead. David led the way, glancing back frequently as if expecting the sirens to snatch them up at any moment. Mia followed closely, her hand slipping into James's for reassurance. He squeezed her fingers tightly, feeling the warmth of her skin grounding him against the chaos that threatened to envelop them. "Just up ahead," David urged, cutting through the sharp, tense air. "The community center is just a block away." James's heart echoed a rhythm of hope and fear. Their plan felt both audacious and reckless. Could they really gather others? Create a community from the ashes of this turmoil? They rounded a corner, and the familiar silhouette of the community center loomed ahead. The facade wasn't grand, but to James, it felt like a lighthouse guiding them through a storm. He could imagine voices filling the hall soon, stories unfolding against every wall. "Wait!" Mia tugged at him, suddenly frozen. "What if we get there, and nobody shows up? What if we put ourselves out there and it's just us?" Her worry hung in the air, heavy and musty, like old dreams left behind. James looked into her eyes, seeing the flicker of doubt. "We have to start somewhere," he said softly. "Even if nobody comes, at least we're trying. That counts for something, doesn't it?" Mia released a breath, her body relaxing just a little, though uncertainty lingered like the distant wail of sirens. Yes, it does," she finally whispered, determination weaving back into her tone. David reached the entrance and pulled the door open, the groan of the hinges whispering of hope and history. As they stepped inside, a wave of relief rushed over them. The interior was warm, filled with soft sunlight filtering through colorful stained glass. David waved them in, moving swiftly to a table stacked with chairs pushed aside haphazardly. "Let us start arranging things. We can make a circle for everyone to sit, like a safe haven." The two jumped into action, moving chairs and setting up for a gathering that felt almost surreal. James couldn't shake the weight of what was ahead. What if this was just a gathering of three? What if their voices were lost in the world outside? But then images of the people in the streets surged back, those rallies he had seen, faces fierce with purpose. "Hey," Mia's voice was steady now, pulling him back to the moment. "It doesn't matter if it's just us. We will be a spark, right? Every change starts small." "Exactly," David agreed, his enthusiasm infectious. "Every fire needs a spark. Otherwise, darkness takes over." With the chairs arranged, they sat, forming a fragile yet powerful trio of resolve. The minutes ticked by, and James anxiously checked his phone. Silence stretched, and he wondered if the world truly cared. Then, a sound footsteps echoing down the hall. A voice, uncertain but curious. Is this where the meeting is? Though only a couple of strangers at first, each new face that entered ignited something in James, an energy swelling, mixing fear with exhilaration. They were not alone. Each person brought a story, and oh, what stories they had. James leaned forward, ready to listen. Each word spoken was a strand weaving them together, a web of resilience threading through the community, but just as he felt the warmth of unity building, suddenly, a shout echoed from outside, sharp and commanding. This is a restricted area. Everyone leave at once. A chill raced down James's spine. They were being cornered, hunted. Could they stand together, or would fear chase them away? He exchanged glances with Mia and David, their expressions were a mix of fear and bravery. Inwardly, James challenged the universe, would they find their voices amidst this uncertainty? The night was pregnant with possibility, but one glaring question remained: would the shadows follow them inside, or would they have the strength to rise up and shine? The echo of the voice outside hung in the air like a sudden storm cloud. James felt a surge of panic. His heart raced, thundering against his chest. The faces in the room shifted from eager anticipation to worry, uncertainty tightening around them. He could see it in their eyes, the flicker of fear that mirrored his own. Stay calm, David urged, his voice steady but strained. We can't let them intimidate us. We're here for a reason. Mia nodded, her grip tightening around James's hand. He took a deep breath, mind racing. They had come too far to back down now. If they dispersed, it would mean letting fear chase them off. And that wasn't what they stood for. Okay, everyone, he said, gathering his courage. Let us stick together. A murmur of agreement spread through the group. The atmosphere shifted, resolve hardening amongst them like steel. They were a handful now, a patchwork of faces and stories, but in that moment, they each felt the weight of unity. The door swung open, and one of the men from the street stepped in. His face was grim, but there was a determination behind his eyes that spoke louder than words. I heard the commotion outside. You're not alone, he announced, striding in like a lighthouse cutting through the fog. I'm not leaving. With him, a few more people trickled in, drawn by the murmurs of resistance within these walls. Their numbers swelled, a motley crew of activists, parents, and concerned citizens, ready to make their voices heard. Each person brought a charged energy that crackled in the air. Listen, David said, his voice rising above the clamor. We're not just here to talk. We're here to organize, to push back against the injustices we're facing. We have to plan for what's next. James looked around, feeling a spark of hope that lit up the room. The floor was barely visible beneath their feet, cluttered with chairs moved at odd angles. The community center, normally bustling with laughter and events, felt like an uneasy battlefield, but they were ready to fight not with fists but with voices. We've all been affected by this, a woman with an unyielding gaze spoke up. We can't keep living in the shadows. It's time for us to find our strength. Right. Someone else chimed in. Let us not just react when things happen, let us create a network, a community that supports each other before the next crisis strikes. We need to plan our next steps. Words flowed now, spilling from trembling lips alongside fiery ideas. James watched as sparks ignited in the eyes of those around him, strangers becoming allies, standing shoulder to shoulder. But just then, the shout from outside returned, this time more menacing. Last chance. Leave now or face consequences. The tension in the room evaporated into static electricity. Fear bubbled up again, but this time it was mingled with fury. Yes, their lives were at risk, but could they truly pave a brighter path forward if they surrendered? Let us not just sit here, James said, a fire igniting within his chest. If they want us to leave, let us show them we'll only grow stronger. We've got to stand our ground. Everyone here wants change. A chorus of nods surged through the room. It was as if something monumental was being born within those walls, a collective spirit, raw with potential. They made their way to the door, lined up together, shoulders squared against the swirling uncertainty outside. In that electrifying moment, it occurred to James that they were collectively writing a new chapter not just for themselves, but for everyone who didn't have a voice yet, a legacy of resilience and hope, growing against the odds. And as they prepared to face whatever awaited them outside, a thought pierced through their courage: were they ready to unleash the full force of what they had started? Unbeknownst to them, the real battle was just beginning, and the consequences of their decisions would echo far beyond that night. Would they find the strength to stand firm, or would the storm scatter them yet again? As they stood shoulder to shoulder, the door creaked open to reveal the dimly lit street outside. James felt the rush of cold air sweep through the doorway like a warning. The shouts from the crowd intensified, cutting through the tension in the room. It was time to act. David stepped forward first, his posture fierce and unwavering. "We know what we're up against. We can't back down now." His voice resonated, thick with determination. Each word sparked a fire in the pit of James's stomach. "Together." James called out, and his voice rang with fervor. He squeezed Mia's hand tighter. She nodded firmly, her eyes bright with defiance. They weren't just fighting for themselves, they were fighting for everyone who felt powerless. The group surged forward, fueled by conviction, stepping through the threshold and into the chaos outside. A heavy sense of anticipation wrapped around them, melding their hearts into one. The street was alive with noise. A throng of onlookers had gathered, some shouting encouragement, others spewing hostility. A few stood ready to capture it all on their phones, faces lit by the glow of screens rather than empathy. Above it all, the deep rumble of conflict teetered on the edge, ready to erupt. As they positioned themselves, a jagged formation of solidarity, James felt the air thicken with resolve. Hearts pounding in sync, they faced those who had come to threaten them. Leaders in the crowd called out, challenging their power. No longer would they cower in the shadows of fear. "Who is here for justice?" someone yelled from the back. "We are." The roar that followed shook the ground beneath them. Courage swelled in James's chest. He was part of something larger. He glanced at the faces around him, their expressions fierce, determined. They were no longer just names on a petition or faces in a backroom meeting, they were a force to be reckoned with. The menacing voice from before cut through the community's rallying cries. "You're outnumbered. You're wasting your time here." But they stood firm, each member fortified by the presence of the others. "We're not here to waste time," David shouted back. "We're fighting for people, for lives. You think we'll back down? Look around you." James's arms tingled with adrenaline as their collective resolve swept like a wave. An unseen weight had lifted, they were no longer afraid. Instead, they were emboldened by the truth that this fight was not about numbers, but about the very heartbeat of their community. Suddenly, a commotion erupted in the distance. A police siren blared, slicing through the atmosphere like glass shattering. It sent a ripple of fear across the group. James felt a sinking feeling. The man from earlier, had he heard the siren? Then, a voice rose amidst the chaos. A woman was pushing through, a fierce expression on her face. "We won't stay silent any longer. We want change." Her feet landed heavily on the pavement, each stride echoing defiance. Just then, a loud crash echoed in the distance, and a figure fell. James's heart lurched. The reality of this fight had shifted yet again, consequences were real, battles were tangible. Would they hold fast? As chaos unfurled around them, James locked eyes with Mia. There was a silent understanding between them, a promise wrapped in shared determination. They were not merely standing for themselves anymore, they were standing for each other. And just when James thought it couldn't get any worse, a new figure emerged from the tumult, waving something in the air. What was it? The crowd hushed, tension coiling like a spring. What had they unleashed, and would it be enough to change everything? The moment stretched unbearably as they watched the figure approach, its intentions unclear. The crowd shifted uneasily, eyes darting back and forth between James, Mia, and the stranger who danced at the edge of chaos, waving a banner of defiance. "Let us show them what we're made of," the newcomer shouted, raising the banner high as if it were a sword. The words leaped from his lips, igniting a spark. The crowd leaned in, ready to answer, to rise. James turned to Mia, who stood with her petite frame squared, determination swimming in her wide eyes. "This is it," he whispered, a mix of anxiety and exhilaration tight in his chest. "This is our moment." And with that, they stepped forward together, the air thick with anticipation, reminiscent of watching a storm gather over open fields. As they approached the front lines, they felt the swell of community behind them, a tangible wave of support crashing at their backs. Each step rang with purpose, the voices from the crowd felt like an electric anthem vibrating in their souls. They were stronger together, bound by shared stories that swirled around them like an invisible cloak of unity. "Justice for all," David shouted, reiterating the mantra that had grown roots in their hearts, echoing through the throngs. "We deserve dignity. We deserve respect." And the crowd responded like thunder. "We deserve dignity. We deserve respect." James's heart swelled, embers of hope dancing through the shrouded fear inside. As they moved closer, he locked eyes with the woman who had first called out for change. Her fierceness resonated with him, and he nodded in silent agreement. But then the darkness loomed again, police officers moved in, shields clamped tight against their bodies, faces obscured under helmets. James felt the knot in his stomach tighten. "We can't back down now," he urged, claiming the space around him. "Stay with me, Mia." The voice of authority rang out, demanding order. "Everyone disperse, or you will be arrested." Yet James and the others remained steadfast. "We're here to fight for our rights," James shouted, refusing to let fear crush him. The presence of the officers felt heavy, but something within him clicked, a shield forged from countless conversations, shared hardships, and the untamed spirit of their community. Mia stepped forward, her small stature amplified by the fire in her voice. "You can't silence us. We're not afraid anymore." The crowd erupted in renewed vigor, their shouts mixing with the sound of feet pounding the pavement. They weren't just standing still waiting for change, they were becoming it. As the police flanked around them, tense and ready, a surge of adrenaline flooded James's veins. "Form a circle," he shouted. The group instinctively turned to face the incoming line of officers, a united front manifesting before a sea of looming uncertainty. Suddenly, the fabric of their collective bravery pushed back against the oppressive weight. "We are not just statistics," David shouted, amplifying their shared rage. "We are voices. We are stories. We are change." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, echoing recognition and a sense of purpose. A powerful bond had formed right there, powerful enough to shatter chains and unite a community, and just as the officers moved in closer, a loud crash echoed, like a culmination of all their fears turning into defiance. A chant erupted from the crowd. "No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace." The rhythm caught fire. It spiraled upwards, and for a moment, the world seemed to change. Voices blended into a fierce harmony, drowning out the noise of oppression that pressed against them. As James and Mia stood entwined in the heat of passion, he realized the battle wasn't only outside. A revolution was dawning within them. They had clung tight to hope, knowing that change had to bloom from the seed of untouched courage. With eyes shining, James squeezed Mia's hand tighter. "This is the moment we've waited for," he whispered. "I know, Dad," she said, her small voice steady and filled with resolve. "We're doing it." The officers hesitated, their stance wavering in the face of unstoppable strength radiating from the crowd. The resolve and tenacity sparked within those who had once felt unsure. One by one, they faced forward, their voices weaving together an unshakable demand for justice. In that moment, James felt something shift within him. What began as fear morphed into a shared cry that echoed loudly through the streets, a promising start. The world outside may have brimmed with chaos, but right then, power resonated within the circle they deformed, encapsulating the spirit of change they longed for. Little did they know, this was not just an end, but the beginning, the heartbeat of a larger movement of awakening that would resonate through the streets, leading to change unimaginable. This was the dawn of a brighter day, crafted not just in silence and submission, but in courage, community, and unyielding love. And as they stood united, facing whatever came next, a truth cemented itself deep within their hearts: they wouldn't just fight for justice, they would be the harbingers of it. Now, let's close this chapter together. This is the moment to rise and take action. Make sure to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next inspiring stories. Leave a like now to fuel this journey and help spread our message. We want to hear your reactions and feelings about this ending. Comment below your thoughts on James and Mia's journey. And don't wait not even one more second, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Together, we can be part of the change.